السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters who are joining us live and of course in person, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our gathering. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this as a source of us being connected to our deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow the study of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to become a source of us becoming more closer to the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and creating its muhabba and its true obedience. With that being said, brothers and sisters, the first part of this particular subject that we covered, dealt with various topics of Ulum al-Hadith. But from last week, a week before actually, last week we're not here, a week before we actually began a little bit more academic portion of Hadith sciences. And that is known as the study known as Mustalatul Hadith. Mustala comes from the Arabic word of istilah. And istilah means terminologies. So different terminologies of hadith, right? What are the different terminologies? We must have heard so many terminologies in hadith. For example, we talked about musnad and marfu and ahad and mutawatir and gharib and sahih and hasan, da'if, mawdu. Like all of these are different types that we have heard. So mustalah al-hadith itself refers to the study of the terminologies of hadith itself. And when we analyze the hadith, and if you remember this, inshallah, I know you do, that when we analyze a hadith, we look at two things. We look at the transmission, which is known as the sanad, who narrated this hadith, or we look at the matan, the context of the hadith itself, the content itself. So matan refers to the word itself, and sanad or asnad refers to the transmission. These are two ways we analyze a particular hadith. But when we classify a hadith, when it comes to the classification of a hadith, is this hadith sahih, not sahih? Is this hadith gharib? Is this hadith mawdu? Is this hadith that? Meaning the classification of a hadith, then you have particularly 5 things that you look at in order to classify the hadith. We did this last week, but this is a reminder. In order to classify the hadith, the first type of classification is the authority of this hadith. We talked about this last time. What does authority mean? Who said this? Meaning, for example, if someone says do this and they say so and so said this, so you do this. So the number one step of classification of a hadith is authority. Who said this? And we broke this down into 4 parts last time. There are certain hadith which are known as hadith qudsi, which goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there are a hadith that goes back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those particular hadith are known as marfu, right? These are those hadith that are marfu. And the word marfu means those that are elevated. And before we get to this further, we also talked about a little difference between hadith al-Qudsi and the Quran as well, right? If this is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what defines the difference between the Quran as well? Then we also talked about the third type of hadith after marfu itself is called mawquf or waqf, which means suspended. And these are the ahadith that are up to the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And last but not least, the fourth category or classification of the authority, who said this hadith, maqtu, is the tabi'un. So there are 4 levels when it comes to the authority of the hadith. That's first type of classification. The second type of classification of a hadith, and again, one hadith could have all of these classifications. Meaning you will classify this hadith according to authority, then you will classify this hadith according to the number of narrators, and then authenticity and all of that, right? So one hadith could have multiple classifications given to them. So tonight, inshallah, we will discuss the second classification of hadith, which is known as the classification of hadith according to the number of narrators. number of narrators. So 5 types of classification. Number 1 was authority. Who said it? Number 2 is how many narrators have narrated a particular hadith itself. So according to the numbers of narrator on each level of the chain of narration, scholars have classified hadith, has classified these hadith. And of course, the classification of a hadith comes in particularly in this, for us at this time, the numbers of narrator in each chain of narration. So for example, at the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, and the time after the Prophet ﷺ's Sahaba in Tabi'un, Taba Tabi'un, and those all the way till the one who's compiling this hadith. So there are different levels of times, and you have to look at every era and every time. So the chain or the transmission has to be looked at all levels. First level, second level, third level, until it reaches the compiler themselves, until we don't reach the person who compiles, like Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Abu Dawud, or anyone else. So we will look above them and see how many levels have there been till this hadith have reached them. Sometimes it's 2 levels, sometimes it's 3 levels. And you will look at all of these levels and you will see how many people narrated this hadith in every level. Level 1, level 2, and level 3. Until it reaches. Depending on the number of narrators of each hadith, and I'm talking about a single hadith, depending on the narrators at each level, the chain of narration, the asnad itself, hadith could be classified as 2. There are 2 classifications only. Like in the classification of authority, who said it? There are 4, right? Hadith Qudsi, Hadith Marfu, Maqtu, and Mawquf, right? There are 4 types of ahadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it goes all the way towards the Prophet ﷺ, to the Sahaba and Tabi'un. But when it comes to the number of narrators in a hadith, and you have to look at not only first level, or second level, or third level, you have to look at all these levels and combine them. If every single level has a large number of people, and I'll discuss that in just a few moments, what is large? If every level has a large number of narrators, then this hadith is classified as mutawatir, continuous, mutawatir, continuous. And if a hadith does not have a large number of people who narrate this in every level, level 1, level 2, level 3, then this hadith is known as hadith ahad. Ahad. And I'll explain both of these in just a few moments. What it means linguistically, all the other ways, I'll explain that in just a few moments. So let's step back a little bit, and I want you guys to think about this, okay? Not just like hear me, but I want you guys to think about it. So, hadith innamal a'malu binniyat. Is this hadith mutawatir? Is this hadith ahad? Any other hadith that you may know of, is it hadith mutawatir? Is hadith ahad? How do you know this? In order to know if a hadith is mutawatir or if hadith is ahad, because they both hold different values, we'll talk about what their values are, what they can do for us, how we take ruling from each one of them differently. Inshallah, we'll talk about that in just a few moments. But remember that how do we know that if a hadith is mutawatir or it's ahad? In order for a hadith to be mutawatir, every level, starting from Sahaba till the compiler of the book, has to be a large group of narrators. So for example, if level 1 had only 2 or 3, but level 2, 3, and 4 had large numbers, it's not hadith mutawatir. It has to be large in every level of its transmission. And that's why there are very few ahadith that are mutawatir. There are very few ahadith that are mutawatir. And most of the ahadith are considered to be ahad, khabar ahad, or the single narrations. And we'll talk about them. And ahad does not mean one in this particular way. It means more than one, but it could be one as well. So in order to classify a hadith according to its narrator, there are two ways. Either a hadith is mutawatir or a hadith is ahad. Mutawatir means every single level has large numbers. Ahad means it does not. Linguistically, the word mutawatir, what does it mean, mutawatir? It is actually comes from the verb tawatara. The word tawatara in Arabic means something that is uninterrupted. You don't interrupt anything, and it goes in succession. Something that continuously moves, something that continuously and regularly, continuously moves, and it's unbroken. That is what the word tawatur means. Something that is not, it is not interrupted, it is not broken, and it is something that is regular and it's continuous. That is the linguistic meaning of the word mutawatir, the hadith. And the word mutawatir is translated, when you say hadith mutawatir, it means a hadith that is consecutively recurrent. Meaning it has been narrated by so many people that you can't say it's a lie. And that's how you also see the Quran as well. And I'll compare this with the Quran in just a few moments as well. So linguistically, it means continuous. Technically, the word mutawatir means it is a hadith that has been narrated by such a large number of people that it is inconceivable that they could have all collaborated in order to perpetrate a lie. Meaning, so many Sahaba narrated the hadith. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ did masha over the leather khufayn. 80 Sahaba have narrated that hadith, right? 80 hadith. But now the Sahaba differ that is it hadith and mutawatir or is it ahad? We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. That's a little complicated. But some ahadith that so frequently are mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they are known as hadith mutawatir. Now, a little bit details of this. Now, what does it mean to have a large number of narrators? What defines large? There are so many people who narrate this and it becomes impossible. The large number of it, right? So how do we really understand this a little bit better? So before we even, subhanAllah, discuss this, this is a very important point, subhanAllah, the scholars have mentioned. And they have said that in order for a hadith or any saying of Rasulullah ﷺ to be mutawatir, there has to be four conditions. There has to be four conditions. Number one condition is that there has to be numerous narrators, many rawis and narrators. The hadith must be narrated by a large number at each level. Now, what does it mean large? Scholars have differed. And there's no specific number that has been agreed upon till today. There's no agreed upon number. And some have mentioned 4, some have mentioned 10, others have said 20, 40, and even 70. Some of the rawis and narrations have mentioned that if you have these many people, then it will be considered to be mutawatir, meaning these numbers have come in. But the basic premises behind the word large itself is that it inspires certainty. Meaning it's so frequent that you know it's not a lie. Everyone is saying it. And a sense of conviction that such a number of people are continuously saying it and cannot be linked to a specific number. And of course, certainty sometimes can be achieved through small numbers. It doesn't have to be large numbers. So the main point behind large is a sense of certainty, an inspired certainty, and of course, a sense of conviction. Some scholars have mentioned that the most agreed upon number is 10. Some have mentioned that the most agreed upon number is 10. If you find 10 narrators in every level, then it's considered to be hadith mutawatir. Some have mentioned this. Some have said, no, it's not according to specific to numbers. It is up to conviction and certainty, even though it may be less or more than that. So in order for a hadith to be mutawatir, number one, it has to have numerous narrators in all levels, number one. Number two, this large number of narrators that we mention must exist at each level of the chain as well, right? Not in one level, not in second level, so not in third level. So if the number of narrators drop below a level at any point, that chain cannot be considered to be mutawatir. There are ahadith that have certain levels that have high numbers of narrators and others don't. So they're not considered to be mutawatir. That's second condition. The third condition is that the impossibility of all the narrators agreeing upon a lie. Meaning it is impossible that all of them will agree upon a lie. And this is caused by mainly two things: large numbers and the different localities of the narrators. And then last but not least, the words that are shared, the hadith that is shared, the basis of this hadith, the basis of this report is not just a thought of a sahabi, or someone said, I thought he said this. No. It has to be essential meaning reported by them, such as the narrator says, I heard Rasulullah saying, I saw the Prophet saying, I felt such and such, right? All that. Not that, I thought that he was doing this. So it has to be something which is not rational thoughts, but it has to be something that is solid, that has passed through. And if a narration fulfills these four conditions, it is considered to be mutawatir. It is considered to be mutawatir. And a mutawatir hadith conveys certainty that is not open to challenges or doubts. This is something to understand as a ruling. That once a hadith is classified as mutawatir, then you cannot open the doors of challenges and doubts against this hadith. Once a hadith is proven to be mutawatir, once it's proven to be mutawatir, and the ruling that is established by it is definitive, meaning you can't change the rulings of it, right? Yes.
Does that include, sorry,
No, don't worry about it.
Does that include how we understand or interpret the hadith?
That's going to come in just a few moments. That's going to be from ahad, the rulings that actually are derived. So for example, and I'll give you the examples of hadith mutawatir and its rulings in just a few moments. And then those ahadith that could have different meanings behind it as well. So in these hadith mutawatir, there is a definite ruling which has already been given. So it's not a larger situation provided, but it's a strict ruling that has been given. And I'll share that in just a few minutes. It's a good question. So once a hadith is proven to be mutawatir with all of these four conditions, then this hadith is not open to challenges and doubts. And the ruling that is established from these particular actions itself, who dictates the ruling? Someone also asked. Who dictates the rulings? And I'll come to that in just a few moments. Inshallah, I'll answer that with Asim in just a few moments. So once the mutawatir itself has been defined and has been established, that there's no challenges or doubts, and the rulings that are derived from it will also become definitive as well. And as a side note, to please remember that this is how the Quran actually has been narrated from generation to generation as well. In addition to how it's been preserved, right? This is mutawatir. That there has been a large group of people from the first level till today that have preserved the exact same Quran as that time itself. So this is such a tawatir, just so mutawatir and so continuous that no one can say the Quran is a lie or someone has conveyed a lie to us, because it has been such a continuous thing. When we talk about hadith mutawatira or hadith with tawatur, scholars have mentioned that there are two types of hadith mutawatira, two types of mutawatir ahadith. Mutawatir ahadith are classified further into two types of ahadith. Mutawatir al-labzi, mutawatir or continuous in wording. What do I mean by that? It's a little complicated, but inshallah it's going to be easy if you understand. Labzi means lafz, which means word, which means that in terms, it refers to hadith mutawatir, meaning that these are the exact words spoken by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever lies or tells lies upon me intentionally, then let them prepare their seat in the fire of Jahannam. Right? These are exact what Rasulullah ﷺ said as words. So this particular hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ said, and Abi Sa'id radiallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من كذب علي متعمدا, the one who lies upon me as words, فليتبوأ مقعده من النار, that let them prepare a place for them in fire. This particular hadith has been narrated by a number of companions, right? Just take this as an example. So for example, hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu, Zubayr ibn Awam radiallahu anhu, Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, Salama radiallahu anhu, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and so many other companions. At every level, this hadith has been narrated. Other narrators and other companions narrated from them and then to their students and so on. But now the scholars have differed. This is where a little bit of complication comes and we need a little bit more attention. The scholars of hadith have differed with respect to the existence of this very particular type of hadith. Can a hadith mutawatir lafzi, meaning exact words that the Prophet ﷺ said, can they ever exist or not? Is it even possible to continuously preserve exactly? Because we can preserve the meaning, but can we preserve the exact loves and words of the Prophet ﷺ? The scholars have differed upon that. But, so the existence of the spoke. So for example, some hadith scholars have claimed that such a hadith do not exist, and others say they are very rare. However, and this is something to understand to make it very comfortable for ourselves to have a sense of comfort, is that vast majority of the scholars, such as the giant Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, the commentator of Sahih al-Bukhari, Ibn Hajar, Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, Qadi al-Ayyaz, Jalaluddin Suyuti, and some of the main scholars of Islam have mentioned that hadith mutawatir al-lafzi is not a rare thing. It is something that the Sahaba did preserve from the knowledge and intellect that Allah had provided for them. So hadith mutawatir al-lafzi, where the words of Rasulullah were exactly preserved and continuously were transmitted, are still present. So for example, the famous hadith where Rasulullah said, every intoxicant is wine and all wines is forbidden. The famous hadith of Rasulullah and may Allah make us from amongst these individuals. Rasulullah said, Naddar Allahu imra'an. May Allah cause to flourish my servant and the slave of Allah, his slave, meaning the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who hears the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my words, and understands them, and then they convey to others. Rasulullah subhanahu gave dua for all of us. Naddar Allah imra'an. May Allah keep that person khushhal, happy, flourishing, always, happy and in the best of the condition, the one who hears my words and practices it and conveys to others. There are those who have knowledge but no understanding, and there may be those who convey knowledge to those who may have more understanding of it than they do. Right? In the famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's one beautiful hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, everyone will find ease. SubhanAllah, everyone will find easy that which they have been created for. This is something ajeeb. If you really look into your own lives, like when you love something and when you are passionate about something, things become so easy for us. When it's not meant for us or it's not us, it's so difficult, right? Even if you're getting paid for it, if you're getting money for it, it's not there. And sometimes it's not even about the money or anything else. It's your passion and your desire because you're meant to do something, right? And that's why Rasulullah ﷺ said, everyone will find easy that which they have been created for. Meaning what you have been created for, Allah will make it easy for you. You'll feel so much more comfortable. And Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahmatullah alayhi have recorded many ahadith that are considered to be mutawatir in both Sahihain as well. The famous hadith that you remember of Mas'al al-Khuffayn upon the leather sock has been narrated over 80 ahadith, 80 companions have mentioned. Other examples, there are many other examples as well. The second type of hadith mutawatir or continuous hadith itself is known as hadith al-mutawatir al-manawi. Manawi means meaning of the hadith itself. And it refers to a hadith mutawatira. And please remember, hadith mutawatir means a hadith that has large number of narrators in every level of its narration, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3, all the way towards the compiler. That's number 1. And we also remember that all of these large numbers are in every level, not 1 or 2 levels. And number 3, they are it is impossible that they can gather upon a lie, and it is not just a thought, but these are the words or the actions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the first one was hadith labzi mutawatir, and now is hadith mutawatir manawi, the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in its meaning that are mutawatir, that are continuous. So a hadith that is mutawatir in its meaning is one in which the words or the wording of the hadith itself may not be mutawatir, but there are so many narrations that talk about the same subject, or maybe the same topic, same meaning. It's considered to be mutawatir. And it is when a number of ahadith share the same subject or meaning itself. So an example for that is there are various ahadith that have been narrated with regards to raising the hands when making dua. That when you make dua, you should raise your hands and you should make dua. And there are a number of ahadith that confirms that. And although each one of them, and these, if taken individually, would not be mutawatir, but the common theme becomes mutawatir itself. Meaning, if you were to take the exact words, you won't find tawatur. But if you were to take the meaning that this Sahabi said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ making dua while he was raising his hands. Or someone said this and that. So the subject matter becomes mutawatir itself. So a good example itself that the author has given and said is the example of, a bad example, may Allah protect and keep us always safe, but imagine a fire that happened in downtown or somewhere else. So in order for one person to report, someone may say, I saw the smoke coming from downtown. Another person might have said that I see people running out of downtown, or some people might have said that I saw fire trucks rushing towards that, or some might have said that I've seen helicopters, and all of these things, which all refers to as the theme of there's something going on there, meaning there's fire there, they need help and support itself. So this type of tawatur is established for a number of acts of worship. And this is where your question also comes, is that in such way, how to perform wudu. So most of the ahadith that have been given to us in how to make wudu is through the tawatur al-manawi, the theme, meaning they're not exact same words, labzi, but the theme has given us tawatur on first it's to be hand, and it has to be between the nose, the mouth, the face, like that. So the tawatur of wudu has been from the ahadith mutawatira, but which are manawi, meaning the theme of it has been shared by so many people. Also, tawatur of how the imam leads the salat, like the imam makes the 2 rakats of fajr or 4 rakats of zohar and asr and stuff like that. That tawatur itself also is manawi as well. And many of the rulings of hajj are also from hadith mutawatira al-manawiyya, meaning through the meanings. Many people attended the hajj, they saw hajj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they reported it. Their words might have differed, but the theme at large gave the exact same meaning itself. So this is known as hadith mutawatira. Now we come to the second type of the classification of hadith according to its number, which is known as khabar ahad. Khabar ahad means the solitary report. What does it mean? So the second type of hadith with respect to the number of narrators is known as khabar al-ahad. Inshallah, it's going to take us 2 more weeks to get to the deeper study of Khabar Ahad itself, because Khabar Ahad also further breaks down according to the number of narrators and respect to its strength and its weakness as well, where Sahih, weak, Dhaif, and stuff like that will also come. Because when it comes to Hadith and Mutawatira, you don't have to classify as Sahih and Gharib and stuff, because they're already as Hadith and Mutawatir itself. So when it comes to Khabar Ahad, which we are discussing just briefly, inshallah, the next week we will talk about the number of narrators in Khabar Ahad, and the week after, inshallah, we'll talk about when it comes to the respect of the strength or the weakness of Khabar Ahad itself, which is Sahih, Dhaif, and other things as well. So let's go to Khabar Ahad. This is important because we need this for the next 2 weeks. The second type of ahadith in respect to the number of narrators is known as Khabar al-Ahad. It is also known as Khabar Wahid as well. Khabar al-Wahid. Ahad and al-Wahid both are there. Linguistically, when we look at the Lughawi terms of it, the word Ahad is the plural form of Wahid. Ahad is the plural form of Wahid, right? Even though there are still one and ones, but they are, subhanAllah, the plural form of the word Wahid, which means one. Or singular itself, singular. Technically, if you look at the istilah, it is defined as a narration that does not fulfill the condition of a mutawatir hadith. Simple. If a hadith is not mutawatir, then it has to be hadith al-ahad or khabar wahid. Meaning, if it does not meet the criteria and condition of hadith mutawatir, all the narrators at every level, impossible for them to consider a lie, and it is not just thoughts, but it's reality of words. If all these conditions are not, or any of them are not present, then that is considered to be hadith al-ahad or wahid itself. It is a hadith that does not fulfill the conditions, all conditions necessary for it to be considered mutawatir. So, hadith al-ahad or wahid might be sometimes narrated by 1, 2, 3, or even more people. So Khabar Ahad does not only mean one. Maybe there are more than one narrator, but it's not on every level itself. Or other conditions may not have been fulfilled. But it does not reach the large number required for it to be mutawatir. The vast majority of the ahadith that we find, subhanAllah, in the, subhanAllah, the entire study of hadith itself are mostly ahad. Most of the ahadith of Rasulullah are hadith ahad. And the ahad narration are subjected to criticism. Right? Criticism in a way that, not that everyone has a random right that I can get up and start criticizing, no. But the criticism itself means that these are the ahadith where the narrators are supposed to be evaluated. You need to do evaluation of every narrator. We'll talk about that in a week after, inshallah. And their uprightness and their accuracy to really determine if this hadith is okay or not, and if this hadith is authentic or not. And the scholars of ahadith have classified ahad narration into 2 different considerations, 2 different types. Ahad narrations are classified into 2 different types. And this will be our 2 next week sessions. With respect to the number of narrators and ahadith according to its authenticity. Inshallah, this will be 2 separate subjects. One week, one next week, inshallah. Ahadith, which are not mutawatir, can be further classified with regards to, in respect to the number of narrators, or with respect to the authenticity itself. If multiple hadith have the same meaning or subject, does this mean all hadith will become mutawatir? Depending on a particular subject, yes. If they're all to be, meaning we're not talking about a large subject itself, but it has to be defined as a particular subject, yes. Or coming closer towards a same action or amal of a person. So the ahad narrations give us a benefit, and I'll conclude with this. This is our few thoughts to remember, inshallah. These are extremely important for us to continue for the next few weeks. That the ahad narrations really give us the benefit of near certain knowledge and can be used to derive legal rulings. Many of the Islamic rulings are derived from ahad narrations, which comes to how the imams have taken multiple rulings from that. And I'll talk about that difference in just a few moments. So individually transmitted reports, makes actions obligatory, but do not make knowledge obligatory. What do I mean by that? That various schools of thought have developed various principles, subhanAllah, for accepting and acting upon these ahad narrations. Meaning, just because a hadith is authentic does not necessarily mean that you have to act upon it. This is an important thing to remember. Just because a hadith is authentic, you have to act upon it. It's not necessary. And let me give you an example. From a Hanafi school of points of thought have established is that a ahad hadith must fulfill, in order for it to be considered as a proof and a base of an action. How do we do this? So let me try to explain this a little bit easier. So one of the conditions, according to Hanafi school, with regards to an ahad narration is that the companion who is narrating this hadith, the ahad narration, must not be known to act against that action. So for example, and if it is known that this person did something against what they have narrated, then ahad hadith will not be taken as a ruling itself. So, for example, according to the Hanafi school of thought, the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in which he narrates and he says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is an authentic riwayah, authentic narration, that when a dog licks a dish, then wash it 7 times, and one of them with pure dirt. Hadith. Because Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu himself gave a fatwa, which is a religious verdict, that is only to be needed to be washed 3 times, and that was his amal and action as well. According to the Hanafi school, if a narrator, if a rawi, has a hadith ahad, a singular hadith that they narrated, but their amal or their fatwa is against that, that means that hadith, their rulings will not be taken into consideration. That ahad hadith will not become a ruling in their fiqh, will not become a ruling in their school of thought as well. Another condition is that the content of the hadith should not be something that necessitate amume balwa, which means a large number of people. In that case, it would be expected that not just a handful of people would have narrated, but large number of people should have narrated. For example, this is the Hanafi school that I'm mentioning. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, authentic riwayah narration, that if one of you touches his private parts, then they should make wudu, right? Famous hadith of An-Nasai, and of course through authentic narrations. And this hadith has only been narrated by one female companion. And this is Khabr Ahad, Khabr al-Wahid itself. Seeing that this is an action that happens and occurs very frequently, or would occur very frequently, then all of the companions might have experienced something like this. It is logically followed that at least a handful of narrators would talk about this. There's no other Sahabi or narration that has ever mentioned anything with regards to this. And therefore, according to the Hanafi school, that it does not carry the same legal weight as a mutawatir narration on the same topic itself. So when it comes to Khabr Ahad, singular ahadith or solitary actions, then every school, every particular subject has been defined by specific rulings. 2 of the rulings that I mentioned with regards to hadith ahad, and inshallah for the next 2 weeks we'll continue. Number 1 is that if there's a hadith ahad, a singular hadith, where a sahabi mentioned a particular hadith, but their amal or their fatwa was against this. And that does not mean, na'udhu-billah, that they are preaching something or doing something else. No. That's not the right reason. But ulama have mentioned that if it is known that the narrator acted against his or her own report, that means that they must have heard or learned something else from the Prophet ﷺ as well, right? Because they're not just randomly doing it themselves. Even though their hadith is authentic, they must have definitely heard Rasulullah ﷺ saying it. But their amal is against what they said previously. That's why hadith ahad does not take the stance of a legal ruling till you do not compare the amal of that narrator as well. And that's what the Hanafi school rating takes as well. Then also, when it comes to amum balwa, meaning a particular subject that is a need of every one of us, meaning a particular subject that all of us need: food, drinking, clothing, meaning every single person has the zarurat of this. But if there was only one person who only narrated a particular thing, even though everyone is in need of that, that will raise a flag and say, we cannot take a legal ruling for that one narration of Khabar Ahad, because it is a subject that is touched by everyone. Amum balwa, which means amum means all, common issue amongst the people, and a single narration does not justify a legal ruling towards those actions. This is all from the different particular schools of thoughts that have come in. Inshallah, when we come to the next particular subject, we'll talk about Khabar Ahad according to its numbers itself. So for example, if it's the Ahad, is it Mashhur, is it Aziz, or is it Gharib? And if it's Gharib, then what type of Gharib hadith it is? Inshallah, we'll discuss that in just a few moments. Now, the question that some of the brothers asked online is that who dictates the ruling? And I think he was talking about who dictates the ruling of what is large and what is small. So when it comes to hadith mutawatira and many of these rulings, we discussed in our early times that the terminologies of hadith and mustalah al-hadith began to get developed near the end of the 2nd and the beginning of the 3rd century in Islam. When the preservation of the hadith began, the terminology and the dictations of the rules also began at that time as well. So when it comes to the deriving of how and who structures these rules, they have been from the very beginning of time. But when we talk about an official process of these rulings, then many of these mustalat al-hadith or its rulings were compiled around at the end of the 2nd to the 3rd century itself. If multiple hadith have the same meaning, I think we have already entered that. Any other thoughts from you guys? Yes.
When we ask about mutawatir, right, I understand that the primary reporter, that is Sahabi, them have been like 10, 20 or whatever the exact number. But why does the 2nd and 3rd level needs to be also involved? Does it mean like it has to be like 10, 15 chain of narrators? It's not, or can it be like in second level, one person is narrating? These are
Sure. So the question from the brother is that if there is a hadith that has a large number of narrators in its first level, meaning the Sahaba, and as the 2nd level may only have a 1 or 2, meaning does not fulfill the numbers of a large number, can it still be considered mutawatir, or why isn't it considered mutawatir? Is that the question, more or less? So yes, it's a good question. And as we had mentioned this previously as well, that mutawatira means unbroken, uninterrupted, continuous till a time that it becomes a common conversation amongst the people. So if there are 10 Sahaba who have narrated at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a particular saying, and as we know that the Sahaba were not individuals who had kept ilm to themselves. They always were people who conveyed the message of Rasulullah to others. Ballighu anni walau ayah. Convey a message from me, even if it's a single verse or an ayah. They conveyed that message. It would not be appropriate that they would hold back the ilm of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we begin to see a decrease in the number of narrators themselves. So it's always a case where you might find less earlier and more after. Very rare would you find a case where you find a large number of Sahaba and very few tabi'un and tabi'un, because they always increased in number. And these were individuals who traveled from far distances and far towns to study, and subhanAllah then distributed themselves into different areas. As the students of Abu Hurairah, more than 16 of them have been narrated of continuously narrating his hadith. And most of them traveled to 7 to 8 different cities across the different areas and horizon. And each one of them had dozens of other students that they continuously narrated every single saying that was reported to them. So it's very less likely a chance that would ever occur as it does not. The only way that hadith may not be mutawatir is that you would find a large number of narrators previous in the later levels, but lesser in the earlier time that would not consider them to be hadith mutawatir. جزاكم الله خير إن شاء الله. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك